Hello, good morning. Welcome to the course of organic production. In this part, we'll speak about soil fertility. I am Professor Giovanni Reduglia. In this part, we'll speak about soil fertility. In fact, previously, I have explained which are the soil characteristics. So the soil is assessed through some characteristics. These characteristics shows us if soil or whether the soil is suitable to cultivate or which soil is suitable for which plant. In fact, soil fertility is the result of all characteristics because soil fertility is the status of the soil with respect to its ability to supply essential elements for plant growth without toxic concentration of any element. This is one definition given from authors in 1997. So, soil fertility refers to the ability of the soil to sustain agricultural plant growth. For example, to provide plant habitat and result in a sustained and consistent yield of high quality. According to FAO, so the soil fertility is the capacity of the soil to receive, store, and transmit energy in order to support plant growth. It is a component of overall soil productivity that deals with its available nutrients status and its ability to provide nutrients out of its own reserves and through external applications for crop production. If we see, there are three main components related to the soil fertility: physical, chemical, and biological. And we have spoke before previously about physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of the soil. The level of the soil fertility results from the inherent characteristics of the soil and the interaction that occur between these three components. Below you see the link that can provide you on the internet these concepts that are explained or are presented in the website of FAO. As previously I've explained in the previous slides and previous lectures, most of the characteristics of the soil that contribute to the fertility depend on the constituents of the original parent rock and by the climate, because climate has the contribution especially for physical alteration of the soil. And then the interventions or the activities of the human being has again huge impact in the soil characteristics and in the soil fertility. Continuous use of acidic or salty synthetic fertilizers, insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides disrupts and make delicate the balance between the three components of the soil fertility, between physical, chemical, and biological fertility. Continue to speak about this argument. The way how we manage the land or um, the way we use the land and extensive degradation are rapidly depleting the amounts of soil and water available for food production. For example, in Africa alone, 6.3 million hectares of degraded farmland have lost their fertility and water holding capacity. And for this, they need to be regenerated to meet the demand for food. As you know, the demand for food is increasing, especially because of the population growth at world level. Based on previous definitions that I presented previously, we understand that a fertile soil has the following properties. So, two main properties: the ability to supply essential plant nutrients and water in adequate amounts and proportion for plant growth and reproduction, and the absence of toxic substances which may inhibit plant growth. But to be more concrete, I'm presenting here a list of the properties that contribute to soil fertility in most of the situations, independently that in some cases we have exception for different plants or different plant species. Okay, let's start this list. So, to have a fertile soil, you have to have sufficient soil depth for adequate root growth and water retention. So this means when the soil is deep, it is more fertile soil for the plants. What else? Good internal drainage, allowing sufficient aeration for optimal root growth. There are exceptions, for example, like rice, which tolerate waterlogging. What else about soil fertility properties? Topsoil with sufficient soil organic matter for healthy soil structure and soil moisture retention. Another characteristic of the soil fertility of the fertile soil is when the soil pH is in the range 5.5 to 7. This pH is suitable for most of the plants, but some prefer or tolerate more acid or more alkaline conditions. Another property is adequate concentration of essential plant nutrients in plant available forms. So it is important that in the soil, when we do analysis, to have in the soil not only concentration, total concentration of the nutrients, but it is important uh, which part of them is available, because not all the quantity of a nutrient in the soil is available in order to be taken by plants. Sorry. What else? Presence of a range of microorganisms that support plant growth. In lands used for agriculture and other human activities, maintenance of soil fertility typically requires the use of soil conservation practices. So, I mentioned a list of most important properties that contribute to the soil fertility. And if we're speaking about conservation practices, it is important because soil erosion and other forms of soil degradation generally result in a decline in quality with respect to one or more of the aspects indicated above. So let's have a look in this table. This is a very interesting table which summarizes the qualitative soil health indicators. You have a list of indicators here. In the first column, on the left side, next to it, you have the best condition and the best time when it can be assessed. And then you have three columns which shows poor, medium, and good. All of these indicators that are in the list are important for fertility of the soil. Let's start, for example, let's speak about earthworms. Earthworms are a good indicator of a fertile soil. As much as or as more earthworms we find in the soil, the more fertile the soil is. For example, in this case, the soil is fertile, or the indicator of earthworms that shows the good conditions in the soil for life, there is when it has more than 10 earthworms in sample that we check or we assess. And what happens normally, the birds start to feed behind the tillage when we do tillage of the soil. Speaking about organic matter color, the soil is fertile, or we understand that soil is fertile when topsoil clearly is defined and is darker than subsoil. Another indicator is organic matter residues. A good soil is when there are residues. We see in a noticeable way residues. Erosion, for example. Let's go a little more down. Let's speak about erosion. We have keeping, or we are protecting the soil. We will have a good soil when is not high level of erosion. When are not clear, for example, runoffs or signs of runoff. We'll see better this in the next slides. And I wanted just here to invite you to study better this table later in the repository, because I have put it there for you in order to have more time to study it, to memorize it. In the previous slides, I spoke about fertility definition. I spoke about chemical, physical, and biological properties of the soil. In this context, biodiversity, biological life of the soil is very important, and especially soil biodiversity. The role of diversity is critical to maintain and well-function and stable agriculture. Diversity below the soil surface is important. It is as important as diversity above the ground. Where many different types of organisms coexist, there are fewer diseases, insects, and nematode problems. There is more competition for food and a greater possibility that many types of predators will be found. This means that no single pest organism will be able to reach a population high enough to cause a major decrease in a crop yield. You know the chain, food chain. So in case of high soil biodiversity, we have this balance. We have this equilibrium um, along the food chain in the soil. Speaking still about biodiversity, as I previously mentioned, it is important biodiversity above the soil and in the soil, in underground, let's say. We can promote a diversity of plant species growing on the soil by using minimum tillage, crop rotations, cover crops, use of legumes, and deep rooting plants, intercropping, using of green manure, using of manures and composts, crop residues returned to the soil, and mulching. Let's have a look in this image. What we see here, we see different plants, different plant species, which have different root system. In the beginning, I'm trying here to use the pointer for you. So if you see here, which are these? These are very shallow roots, which are roots of cultivated plant, cultivated variety. And these other here that are deep roots, which are roots of native species. Oh, what do I see here? I'm presenting here an image which shows the complicated interactions between organisms and microorganisms in the soil. So there is it is a huge life in the soil. And the soil organisms and microorganisms are very important in decomposing the residues that stays in the soil. If you remember in the previous slides, I mentioned that for keeping a fertile soil is important to recycle or to keep in the soil the residues. And these residues can contribute to the soil, to the plants, to the organism when they are decomposed. And who is decomposing them? Exactly the soil organisms that include microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, actinomycetes, and other organisms like arthropods. These organisms here, there are again three levels of consumers. We have primary now that are residues of the plants. I'm trying to show again with a pointer. So here you have the plants residues or other residues, even from animals, which will be transformed from the previous first consumers, which are here. You see the first consumers and this. For example, this can do cutting of the plant residues in smaller ones, and they can be even easier to be attacked from other organisms. Then we have second level organisms or the second consumers, and then in this image we have the conclusion or the summarizing what we have spoke till now. We spoke about soil fertility, We can assess the soil fertility through different indicators. We know that the soil have three groups of properties: physical, chemical, and biological properties. In a fertile soil, we have good tilth, a good surface structure of the soil. We have porous and stable soil. There are no subsoil layers which restrict the root growth. A good soil, a fertile soil, have good aeration, have a good water storage capacity. A good or fertile soil has a good drainage of the water when the water is in excessive quantity. The pH tends to be neutral. We have in a fertile soil optimal nutrient levels, have not present of harmful chemicals like, let's say, heavy metals or synthetic chemicals. We have low levels of salts. Regarding the biodiversity, in a fertile soil, in a good soil, we have high level of biodiversity in above ground and in the soil or underground. In the soil, we have high quantity or plentiful beneficial organisms and low pest pressure or low number of pests. Till the next lecture, till the next part of this lecture, I say you good study. We'll see in the next part speaking about soil fertility management.